This project is going to be modifying the fuel sump that's in the fuel tank because I have starving issues on fuel in high G corners, mostly left-handers, from about a half a tank of fuel and below. So the object, or my goal actually, is to do a modification that would hopefully eliminate that stalling issue so I can maybe get to a quarter of a tank. It's just nerve-wracking when you're on the track. Street driving, it's fine. And this is also on the Coyote, so I have a return line, so that's where the test is coming in. And if that doesn't work, then my plan B is to probably install the Holley Hydromat. But I have a track event coming up in a few weeks, so I'm going to do this modification now and then put it to a test, and I'll give you the results when I get back. So stay tuned. We're going to move the 3 screws here that hold the filler neck in. Okay, also inside the trunk, we're going to remove these 3 screws here. Some of the prep work before removing the fuel tank is going to be, we're going to remove the ground strap here, this bolt we're going to remove. We're also going to remove this clip and this fuel vent line here, and we're going to probably take this one down here as well. This will stay intact. We just have room, as remember we loosened all the bolts that were up here plus the neck, because this tube in here goes in about this far, so the tank actually comes down and goes this way. Then we're going to come in, undo the pump and sending unit connector. Then we're going to come over here and we're going to take the fuel vent lines off here, the clip here. We're going to undo this, the wire to the solenoid connector rather, and then we're going to take off the 3 bolts. There's one here, one up here, and then there's one on this side, and then this evap box actually just kind of snakes out. And then on the other side, we're going to be taking the fuel filter off. So this is the feed in and out. So we'll take this, disconnect this, and then we're also going to disconnect, if you can see up through here, my return line fitting here. And then this strap bolt that's right here. This strap bolt that's right there. And then I'll slowly drop it down, and again it'll go that way, slide out, so it kind of tilts at an angle from like this position kind of down this way and then kind of out. Small screwdriver through this side and push the pin out, but sometimes you're lucky enough, and I just got a little magnet being held up here a little bit. There we go. Pull that out, and then this strap will come up and we can get this out of our way. Okay, now that I've got the tank on my stand here so I can be comfortable where I've drained all the fuel out of it, I'm going to clean the top of this off. Not really dirty. I'm going to go ahead and pull the connectors off here, pull my wire up because I'm going to pull the sending unit out. Inside you have, there's a small clip right here, right there, and then there's one on the opposite side right there. You gotta push these, kind of just push them this way. Let's see if I can get an idea here. So I usually put a screwdriver behind it and just pry it this way. It'll unsnap, and then this whole pump should come out of here. So once I pull this off, then you'll see the screen that's in the sump, or excuse me, on the pump that's in the sump. And I'm using a 3/16 socket to get the small screws out. And I'm going to take the pump ones loose, and that's just to separate this. Ideally, we're going to pull this out. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do yet. Back dealing with the fuel starvation issue, come up with a couple of ideas. So I'm going to have the tank in and out a few times, but I did some brainstorming today, and basically want to try to keep fuel in here as the pump's in, and of course this little beyond here, etc. And the return line feed comes out here, and then the excess feed goes here, which actually goes down and basically kind of backs into here to keep the sump full. But on starvation, when you basically run out of fuel in here and the screen down here is not enough to keep fuel in, I thought, because I have a return line coming from my regulator on the engine, so it's going to return back. So I put another 45 fitting onto here. So the return, instead of it just coming in and splashing around the closed sump and splashing down into the pan, I am going to drill a hole, kind of measured this out. I'm going to drill a hole right here, about 3/8 or so. And then once the pump is on and all this is back in here, that'll come down through that hole, and it'll actually feed the fuel back down into here, into the sump, right where the filter, or excuse me, right where the pump is, and everything should work. So that's going to be my first try, and then I have a track event coming up, so I'm going to purposely run the tank to at least a half a tank or below and do some hard G-pulls in corners that I do, and I'm going to see what happens before I try the Holley hydromat, which is going to be a little bit more convoluted, or I'm just going to go to a Cobra tank and I'll still put the hydromat in. But for right now, I'm going to try this as a solution. The attempt is to get the return right here coming through the hat, and then just dump it right back down into the sump, and that way it'll stay around the pump itself, and hopefully instead of it splashing out around a closed system and going just down into the tank, and hopefully this screen picking it up on low fuel, that I'll be returning fuel directly into the sump and hopefully stop the fuel starvation on high G corners. I just did a test fit into the tank. It's tight. I'm not going to be able to get a really good shot, but the drain or the return fitting that I have here will fit and get close to that hole. But to make sure that I get it in there, I'm going to cut a piece of fuel line, clamp it to this. See, this is going to go this way, so I'm going to clamp to the natural curve of the hose in here, and I'm going to cut a piece just about 1.5 inches long. I'll get this clamped, get everything set like it's going to go back in, put the bowl back on, show you a completed setup, and then I'm going to stab it in the tank. The pump assembly is back together. I'm going to do the best I can to explain what was done. And I know it's really cramped. This is tight, so trust me, working on it was tight too. I'll get this at a right angle. So you can kind of see the blue fitting right here where my pointer is, and that's going right to the return line right here from the regulator up on the front. So fuel's going to go out, pressure's going to go out, come back. Then I put a 45 fitting here with a short piece of 5/16 hose that's right here, drilled a 9/16 hole in the top hat of this, and then put the hose on, zip tied it down. It's over a swedge lock fitting, and then it goes into the tank. I'm gonna guess about a half an inch, maybe 3/4 at the most. So the fuel return will always now go into the sump, and I shouldn't have a problem. But if I do, I'm having a track event in a couple weeks, so I'm going to test this and find out. So basically the pump assembly is ready to go back into the car, or into the tank rather, and I'm going to do that. So it's kind of a puzzle. It's like, because I have to fish the sending unit in, but it's ready to go in, and I'm pretty sure this is going to work. But we're going to find out, or I'm going to find out. Ready to stick the fuel pump assembly back in that I just modified. So again, this is the return line, goes to a rubber hose which goes into the cap. Sending unit, I had to solder the wire back on in there. So this is going to get folded up. This screen is going to get folded up because it's going to fall down into here, and then it'll flap open and go into the tank through this opening. That one there. And then you just got to feed the sending unit, float system, and this little kind of notched out L shape here. As you can see, it will go like right here. So I can't hold the camera and do this at the same time, so I'm going to set the camera down at an angle, and you'll just watch the whole process kind of go in and down, and then it'll snap lock on each side here, and I'll bolt it down, and then I'll set it back in the car. So okay, I'm going to apologize in advance if I get in the way, but it is tight quarters, so I'm just going to start snaking it in. Tank's ready to go back in the car now. Fuel pump modified assembly is back in. We'll just have to wait and see. I'm hoping everything's all right. It was a lot of tedious, struggling work with, used old hoses and the plastic fuel lines that are there. But at least I know that all the return fuel is going to actually go into the sump itself and not just spray into the tank. So hopefully that'll solve the problem, and if it does, great. Just got back from a little test drive. Everything seems normal like it did before. I stuck 5 gallons in it to start and drove it down and put another 5 gallons in, so I know where 5 gallons is. It's about a quarter of a tank mark on my gauge. Put another 5 gallons in just so I have a reference, which is just about halfway between half and 3/4. So I'll be hitting the track this coming weekend. I'm going to do a test, and I'll know where I am and how much fuel I have in there. So I'm guessing somewhere around 8 gallons is when it starts messing up, which would be just about a half a tank. But if I can get to a quarter of a tank, I'm going to be real happy. So you'll have to stay tuned to see what happens after that. I may just put a short clip or add it on to this. I'm not sure yet. This is the follow-up to the fuel pump sump modification I did in my SN95 Coyote swapped Mustang with the GT tank, and I will say that it worked. I had no hesitation, no problems whatsoever, and the first day I ran it below a half a tank, second day ended up below a quarter of a tank, and it performed just fine. So again, this is mainly in high G corners, mostly left-handers. Street driving, it never affected it at all. I only noticed it when it was on the track. So I think my problem is solved, and I'm gonna say that this project is done. I do have another event coming up in the next month, which I will test it again, but I have more confidence that I will not anticipate having it hesitate on me. So again, thanks for watching, and hope this helps somebody out if you ever want to do this.